There is a particular kind of strength that no one ever names. Not the kind that gets celebrated, not the kind that appears on the other side of a crisis, cleaned up and resolved. The kind that shows up on a Tuesday morning when there's a toddler who won't put on his shoes, and a baby who hasn't slept, and a court document on the kitchen counter that still needs a signature, and she just moves. That's where this story begins. Not with a collapse, not with a revelation, with a woman who kept moving when most people would have stopped. Claire was 22 when she met Daniel at a small Christian college in the Midwest. The kind of school where people pair off young, where marriage feels like the obvious next chapter, where the question isn't if, but when. They met as freshmen, fell into the comfortable rhythm of shared faith, shared friends, shared futures drawn on napkins at late-night diners. By 2018, he had proposed. They married the following April, bought a house the month before, because that was the order of things in their world. You didn't live together first. You committed. You trusted, you signed the papers, and you built something. And for a while, they did. Their first son arrived in 2021, a boy with dark eyes and his father's stubbornness and his mother's patience, though none of them could have known that yet. And that, Claire would later say, is when things started changing, slowly enough that she almost missed it, clearly enough that she couldn't pretend otherwise. There's something particular about the moment a person realizes their marriage is not what they believed it to be. It rarely announces itself. It arrives the way water damage arrives, invisible for a long time, then suddenly, everywhere, a silence that lasts a beat too long. Something hidden, something said that can't be unsaid. And then one day, the weight of all of it becomes impossible to carry quietly. For Claire, that weight reached a breaking point in October of 2022. She remembers sitting in her car in the driveway for a few minutes before going inside. Just sitting, not crying, not thinking exactly, just understanding something she had been circling for a long time, without letting herself land on it. That night, she called her mother. Her mother, Sandra, picked up on the second ring. She listened without interrupting, which is harder than it sounds. When Claire finished, Sandra said, "You already know what you need to do. You've known for a while." She wasn't wrong, but knowing and deciding are not the same thing, and Claire wasn't ready to decide yet. A few days later, she had a different conversation. This one with her cousin Mark, a man she had grown up with, someone Daniel also considered a friend. Mark believed with genuine conviction that most marriages could be saved if both people simply tried harder. He asked, "Have you two really talked, about what you both need?" Claire understood Mark was trying to help, but she also understood something he didn't. Sometimes men just don't know how to say what they're feeling. Maybe he's scared. Maybe he doesn't know how to ask for help. She didn't argue with him. She understood that Mark was trying to help in the only way he knew. She wasn't describing a man who was scared and struggling to communicate. She was describing a pattern, and patterns are different from moments. She thanked him, she hung up, and she continued planning. She's not the kind of person who makes sudden decisions. She waited. She gave the situation every chance she honestly believed it deserved. A family vacation had already been arranged, people flying in, logistics in motion, and she didn't see the sense in breaking everything apart before that. So she went. She smiled in photographs. She watched Daniel play with their son in the water, and felt something complicated that she didn't have a name for, something that was grief and relief and exhaustion all at once. They came home in late December. On January 2nd, she sat down with Daniel and gave him an ultimatum. Counseling, time apart, space to examine what was underneath the surface of a marriage that had been slowly filling with water. He agreed, more quickly than she expected, which told her something. She filed away without comment. In March of the following year, something happened. Claire has always called it the incident. She offers no further description. She doesn't need to. She called the police, filed for a protection order the following morning. Standing at a courthouse counter with a baby strapped to her chest and a form she had never seen before in her hands. What followed was months of court dates she attended alone, continuances that moved the calendar forward without resolving anything. Legal terminology she taught herself at night on her phone after the boys were asleep. She didn't know for several months that she was entitled to a court-appointed attorney. She figured it out eventually. She kept showing up. When a second incident occurred the following April, on their wedding anniversary, a detail that landed with a particular kind of weight, she filed again, this time with private attorneys. $40,000, eventually, wired from a savings account she had built babysitting while pregnant with her second child. She paid it without hesitation. Then she went home. At the end of Claire's account, she talks about the house. She gets to stay. For several years, she doesn't say exactly how many, but for the time being, the boys have their home, their rooms, their backyard, the particular geography of a childhood that will shape them in ways none of them can predict. She says she's grateful. She says it plainly, the way she says most things, without decoration, without asking for acknowledgement. I think about the boys often. They are very small right now, old enough to have a favorite cup, a favorite blanket, a stuffed animal that must be present at bedtime, not yet old enough to understand the word custody. They will grow up in a house their mother fought to keep for them, quietly, without an audience. They won't know that story for a long time, maybe ever, in its full shape. And I think about Daniel, somewhere out there, 4 nights a month, sitting in an apartment that is his alone now, building a life in the spaces between visits, trying to become something closer to the father he imagined being. What does a man carry from a story like this? The version he tells himself at 2 in the morning, when the apartment is quiet and there is no performance required and no one watching. That version. The one where he has to account, honestly, for the distance between who he meant to be and what he actually did. These things take time to become clear, sometimes longer than we expect, sometimes longer than we can afford. Claire's story ends on a practical note, which feels right. She wonders how the drop-offs will go now that mediation is settled, whether the cooperation she observed in recent weeks was a genuine shift or a calculated performance. She'll stand in a parking lot, in public, because the restraining order requires it, and she'll hand her children to someone she once stood beside at an altar. She'll watch the car pull away. She'll get in her own car. She'll drive home to a house that is quieter than she expected and louder in ways she didn't anticipate. She'll figure out what comes next, not because it doesn't cost her anything, but because the cost has never been the reason to stop. A mutual friend, a man named Greg, who Daniel trusted, agreed to take him in. The arrangement was made quietly, without drama. The day after Daniel left, Claire took a pregnancy test. She sat on the bathroom floor for a long time. Then she got up, put the test in the trash, washed her hands, and went to check on her son. There's a version of this story that's easy to tell. The version where someone is simply a victim and someone else is simply a villain, and the ending feels like justice. This is not that version. What stays with me about Claire's account is not the drama. It's the management of it, the relentless, unglamorous, unwitnessed management. She started babysitting to build her own money. Quietly, her pregnancy not yet showing. The families she worked for knew everything. She told them plainly, "I need this money for a specific reason." They asked no questions. Daniel knew she was working. He didn't like it. She noted his reaction without responding to it. She saved. She planned. She had a conversation with her father. He spent 3 days not saying much to anyone, and then called Claire on a Thursday evening and said, "Whatever you need, we're here, just that." It was enough. 7 months pregnant. Claire sat across from a therapist and said she was done. She had prepared for this moment methodically. Her son was already at her parents' house. Her car was packed. The security camera at the front of the house had been unplugged the night before because she didn't know how Daniel would react, and she wasn't willing to find out under conditions she couldn't control. He didn't fully believe it was permanent. There was something in the way he responded, cooperative, almost relieved, that suggested he thought this was a pause, not an ending. She gave him 2 weeks alone in the house. In the middle of her own crisis, she arranged for him to have space to process. That is a kind of moral seriousness that tends to go unrecognized. Their second son arrived in late September. Claire called her mother to drive her to the hospital. She sent Daniel a message after she'd been admitted. He came. He was more present than he had been during the first birth. There is something particular about receiving care from someone you are in the process of leaving. It doesn't simplify anything. It just adds another layer to what you're already carrying. Daniel came during the days, left at night. They moved around each other in the kitchen with the careful choreography of people who know each other's habits and are no longer sure what to do with that knowledge. Her father called reliably, asking about things he could fix, the car, the furnace, the gutters. She understood. That was love too, just spoken in a different language.